bring it through fast raps and critical stats, analytical slap. I'm hitting you smack. I'm sticking you smack lips to stack chips, all with the lyrical technique. For party crashes, liquor spilling mayhem. Punk cops to play them, stupid bitches to slay them. It's all serious biz, no time remains for the cattle defecation.
Welcome to episode 83. I said that in the intro last week. It was, in fact, episode 82. This is episode 83 of Breakup Gaming Society, a podcast about board games, booze, and hip-hop. Breakup Gaming Society is basically me, your host and narrator, the great unclean one. I welcome you with necrotic arms. Usually I start off the show with a bit or a rant, but today we're going to do news and small creator shout-outs from in or near my circle that from people I think deserve your consideration. Breakup Gaming Society wishes good luck to Marceline Lehman, designer of High Tide, a lovely small format tile-laying game made by hand. She'll be packing her creation off to the Indie Games Night Market at PAX Unplugged in Philly next month, and after that, I'm told a non-handmade version will be hitting the market at some point because her title got picked up by a publisher. Well done. That shit is not easy. And also, keep an eye on Inkling Print Company. My good friends in Texas, they're making a hand-printed cloth map just for High Tide. You can also expect a session report and a review when and if I get my hands on a copy. Another full regiment salute goes out to Jared Carmichael, host of 3 Minute Board Games, one of my favorite YouTube channels. Mr. Carmichael is also a game designer with 2 titles launching right now. Red Dust Rebellion, a super crunchy struggle for power on a future colonized Mars. The game's built on the Counterinsurgency, or COIN, board game system, and it's published by GMT Games. And his second, if you can believe that, it's Shadow Moon Syndicates, a completely different space struggle featuring 2 to 5 asymmetrical cartels jostling for oxygen and influence. I just have a quick question for Mr. Carmichael, being that he seems to have a latent need to conquer space. Sir, I would like to be in your faction. I have PR skills. I can get you placed in the Mars Street Journal. For compensation, I just want an office that's not situated at the lip of an airlock like last time. Reminds me too much of employment on Earth. Last and not certainly least, the prof. The other day, I had a minor stroke when a younger friend of mine, upon hearing a very low-volume 1992 Grand Poobah track on the speaker, said that it hurts to even say this, he said Grand Poobah sounded a lot like Will Smith. So when I cooled down like 6 days later, I realized that this is primarily a generational thing. And before I could have helped this young person, I'd need to sketch out for him a rough map of the golden era's genius. I didn't have the energy for that. But the answer came to me. The prof can do it. I speak of Professor Mike Jordan out of KABF in Little Rock, Arkansas, whose Old School, New School, Need to Learn Though show runs most Friday nights for 3 hours. Mike packs that playlist with the best of the golden era, the brightest of the underground artists, and new releases from old legends. And to top it off, he's a great guy with an expansive human spirit and a deep love for every track he plays. I've been listening my way through his last show all week, and I'm still learning stuff about the late 80s that I thought I knew. So here's the policy going forward. And this is for everybody. Until you've listened to the prof's playlists for at least 12 hours, you don't get a hip-hop opinion. Not on my time. There is no excuse for laboring in ignorance when the prof is right there. 12 hours. That's the price of admission to even talk about hip-hop with me. I don't have the patience or the deep knowledge to teach, but he does. So God bless you, Mike Jordan. That's the Old School, New School, Need to Learn Though show, which I listen to on Mixcloud, and you should listen to it too before you decide to start popping off. It's time for a beer or 4. Here comes Drink of the Week. Things go dark. The early sunset is a prison door. Every night at 5 o'clock, I just sit on the couch and wonder how I'm going to fill the next 5 hours. I've had a good day, but I just don't have the tools to shape this cold, unwanted second day. I'm blank, but, not all lightless things are bleak. I've reacquainted myself with a favorite old stout, found another one over the summer I loved, both of them from Colorado Springs breweries. and got a pal who mans the taps at Golden City Brewery in Golden, Colorado, to reco his favorites of the season. So my bullshit quickly. Winter Warlock, Bristol Brewing. This one pulls heartstrings and also reminds me of my lack of formal grounding in beer reviewing. Bristol Brewing, way before they moved across the street to the redeveloped school, was the first brew pub in Colorado Springs where my spouse-to-be and I would sit and knock a few back. I drank Winter Warlock regularly. Now, we've fallen out of touch, but I did catch up with the Warlock, and I had a nice session with it while I was trying to learn a new game. There's a very delicate juncture when I'm trying a stout. There's an early hitting note in there, this base flavor that, in the Warlock, is pleasant and invites you to continue. But I've noticed that particularly stoutish thing can also give the impression of a mildewy flavor on the handshake, and you have to try to forget the first half of the quaff and see what happens in the sensorium. I need to look into what element of the stout process yields that note or sensation, because it happens a lot, and I should probably be able to name it by now, don't you think? Goat Patch Stout. And I'm talking here about whatever version of Goat Patch Stout was coming out of the taps at the Antlers Hotel in July when I spent a little time up there with the moms. I'm not sure which flavor it was, but this was a Jekyll and Hyde experience, a story of two very different pours and vibes on the same property. At their pub and grill spot, which I think is called Primitive Sporting Life or something, there's a long, high communal table with good lighting and room had enough room for me to teach the moms how to play the Patchwork Americana 2-player edition, which she liked, and we each got a stout. I listened closely to what she had to say about this because she has a much sharper palate than me. She said what I was feeling. It was malty, nutty, and just the right amount of sweet. And I got to drink most of all the beers because her glass is still 90% full when she looks at me gravely and says, "I'm impaired." You tried, Ma. Now, just a short walk north is their lobby bar, where I met my buddy Nate the day after that Mom went home. It's a board game hostile environment. Most of the tables in the lobby are ankle height, and the lighting over the bar booths is weird. We can't read our cards, and they're pouring the exact same stout. I'm already talking it up to Nate because he's a brew cognoscenti. I want to give him a pleasant surprise, and we get a pint, and it's vile. It's pouring too cold, and it's sour. Plus, there's some drunk, middle-aged Southern lady at the bar who I just catch her finishing a sentence at the top of her lungs with, "And if I had a crush on anybody at that office, that person was white." Yeah. So back to Sportivo Primitivo we go, so we can get a good pour of the Goat Patch, which we enjoy. But enough of my Colorado Springs half-recalled memories. The real spotlight here belongs on my man Christopher Gilmore, writer, comic, filmmaker, and just one of the goddamn best-natured people I've ever met, who turns in these endorsements for Golden City Brewery's Coconut Chaos Porter and Baltic Porters. He should know because he pours them and he's tried them all. I think he's tried them a lot. This is his review, and I quote, "Golden City Brewery has been brewing tongue-loosening, responsibility-escaping concoctions since the Colonel's oft-mentioned golden era of hip-hop. The brewery boasts the best beer garden in the state, which includes a pergola with propane heaters to keep thirsty patrons warm from the first fall days through the winter snows. As great as the beer garden is, their beers on tap are even better. And as the hues of beer flowing from behind the bar shift darker, I'm going to discuss the seasonal favorite, the Coconut Chaos Porter. This beer is the perfect transition from the light lagers and kolsches of summer to the brooding stouts and porters of fall and winter. While the heat and sun demanded I made every excuse to drink on a patio, balcony, deck, or in the park with a 32-ounce bomber towering out of a koozie, this porter slows things down to match the sleep-inducing, self-reflecting, streaming-centric chill of fall and winter. The coconut of the beer's title is subtle enough that even the most staunch coconut haters can enjoy it. This most likely comes from the fact that the fresh coconut isn't added later in the brewing process. Many coconut-flavored beer and spirits, they dump extract into the mix late in the game. This coconut It's fermented and distilled right from the beginning with the hops and yeast, and all those magical elements combined give me a purpose and get me out of bed every day. It's a hearty drink on tap or in a can. But the number one reason to have a Coconut Chaos Porter is that it is the perfect opener for Golden Brewing Core Sample. That's the name of the beer. Their big-bodied Baltic porter. While this beer is only currently available in cans, it is the finest beer I've tasted during my time working at GCB. The larger yeast and cold fermentation make this a smooth journey past the lips, over the molars, and down the esophagus. Plus, the huge 9.3% AVB is the cherry on the top of this cold weather treat. With the School of Mines just up the street from the brewery, this geology-themed beer will surely return to the taps in the near future, but until then, rush down to get a can from one of the few remaining cases of Core Sample and indulge in the perfect beer. End quote. Thank you, Christopher. There you go. That's 4 Colorado beers, all of them dark, recommended by 2 well-meaning alcoholics. Next, replays and some rethinks of the board games of summer.
I kicked it, come on, you couldn't bang with it if your name was Gang.
So I told you back in my Peeves and Passions episode that I like to explore things at my own pace, and since nobody's paying me to be fast, I replayed and took notes on my favorites of 2024 to see if they felt or looked any different with a little more patient exploration. Sometimes the difference was dramatic. Here they are. Thunderbolt Apache Leader. It's weird having a Gulf War era close air support game be my muse, but I'm in no position to refuse inspiration in any form. I just keep writing up sessions reflexively, like a scribe jolted into action when a prophet speaks. I'm going to serve you up a slice of the action from my last mission. Today, warthogs and Apaches were paired off with each other for our desperate sweep of the back porch. There was much hooting on comms as we confirmed Rebel and Rock had finally crushed the fast assault battalion that had been flooring it through our fire for the last 72 hours. After their run, they spotted a surviving truck or two hauling ass to comical banjo music, but those discombobulated leftovers will never be a coherent fighting force again. Now, if Halo and Montana can do the same to the remnants of the infantry battalion we hit earlier, we can likely weather it when the next threat, a full-strength air defense unit, enters our tender rear zone. Then we regroup and make them pay on day 4. My gamble with Montana's engine block craps out. He plummets into scrub and rock en route to the attack zone. Halo pushes on, his A-10 laden with the fruits of one of the last special option points I can justify spending. He opens with a classic, busting a command unit wide open with a Maverick and simultaneously knocking out a piece of anti-aircraft artillery in his approach path with an independently targeted GBU-16 missile. He banks back, switching to high altitude. His strike ability is compromised, but the 3 Mark 20s and 2 Mark 83s should be enough to hollow out the remnants of the battalion that are all bunched across 3 hexes in the middle of the board. With a little luck. There's no more luck. He calls in the ping from the helicopter that materializes at 6 o'clock low, and the Sidewinder that issues from it. That's the last we hear. End quote. So we have a lot of games to cover today, so if you want to read the rest of that one, hit up the blog at breakupgamingsociety.com and see my October 4th post called Learning Thunderbolt Apache Leader and Improving Commander's Notebook, Part 1. Next up, Final Girl, Madness in the Dark. So, past episodes have revealed my thrill and disenchantment with Van Ryder Games' Final Girl, the solo horror board game. I bought the Madness in the Dark set, which is based on the Silent Hill video game franchise, and lost famously about 1 million times in a row during my spring plays. It was getting discouraging. Then this happened. So I drew a setup card called The Doctor is In, and just from the randomness of the flop, I got unmarked pills that were at the top of the item deck in 2 of the rooms, and then the medical stockpile event, and then a tranquilizer gun as the easiest findable weapon. I'm concerned already. There is no obvious or easy way to take a big divot out of the Ratchet Lady. That's the slasher in this one. You have to hit her early. It's important because she has an ability to accumulate unlimited health tokens. She has no upper health limit. So I saved 2 victims, but the horror card draws and misfires on skill checks are just build up her health at an obscene pace. There are more big early plays fail that I couldn't fail, and plus, let's face it, I managed my action cards poorly because I was rusty. It was just the 4th turn, and I'm already deciding whether to sweat it out for the practice or just reset it. Forgot how fast things in this game can go catawampus, but I suppose nothing's wrong with just playing the same room setup and running it again, right? I mean, so much seems to depend on the setup and the fragility of those opening moves. So I'm resetting more, earlier and earlier, as my opening 3 turns just go sideways on fire. I can't help but compare these L's with my recent losing campaign of Thunderbolt Apache Leader. I got ground to dust during my last stint in that squadron commander's chair. Even the losses in Thunderbolt Apache Leader are rich. The good and bad decisions, the good and bad breaks, they're all more satisfyingly interspersed and paced. This, what I'm experiencing now, is just aggravation. I want to like the Final Girl system, but the experience it's delivering over and over again must be 15 plays in, only coming close to winning once. And it's not like I'm desperate for a first win. More meaningful losses with some kind of improvement would keep me in it. I'm having moments. I just turned 55. What am I doing? If I want to be in a constant state of high simmer peak, I can just hop on Mastodon and hear middle-class shitlibs in tech and science and education professions produce hopelessly class-blind post-election analyses and write poems about how they're going to resist stuff. It's like reading the diary of a precocious, freshly jilted college sophomore. I just can't read it anymore. By the time you get to the 11th poem, there's nothing new to see. Anyway, I may or may not keep that last part. To continue, so I reset Final Girl one more time to see if a new layout and cards lights up a path for Veronica, a teenager and the protagonist who has much more immediate problems than U.S. election cycles. The hook-handed bone hammer and the trash can lid show up on top of the item piles. That's more like it. Let's give it another run. As the game unfolds, I mounted one effective hit-and-run attack on the Ratchet Lady to keep her hit points pruned. I used the short rest action in a finesse play that prevented her from gaining health off an event card. And I got some good rolling along the way at last, including never missing the self-damage check you have to take when you swing that dangerous weapon. And I'm muddling through. And for the first time, I see a closeout move. It's so self-evident, it's incandescent. On the turn that the finale card would activate and make the Ratchet Lady prohibitively strong with a final power, I push into the doctor's office for another Bonehammer attack on the Ratchet Lady. I kept just enough maneuvering room open for this. Prioritizing the Bonehammer pickup, killing 2 of her maniacs with it so my freedom of movement wasn't pinched, and I also regularly invested in distraction and focused actions to keep the horror track manageable. I even pulled off some finesse tactics, like I told you before, with using the short rest action to make sure that I could recover health a little bit faster than she could. So I move into the room, and I play Furious Strike. So I spend cards so that both dice are successes. Ratchet Lady is reeling. She lashes back out at me as I'm the only one around, by design. Then I play Retaliate, which I push to 2 successes. Her final hit point marker is blank on the backside. It's over. She's dead. My mind won't register it. My mind just won't register it at first. So I walk about 7 laps of my living room with my shirt off, index fingers held aloft like I'm a tight end that's just scored the winning touchdown in a bowl game. This is why you board game or magnetize to anything you love, because it transports you. I was imbecilic with triumph for several minutes. The throes of my growing repulsion for this game, I forgot to imagine there'd be an elation equal to the disgust. I look for a card that says hit again and again because I would buy it. Let Veronica pound her flat. She's earned it. I finally get to open the envelope with the unlocked bonus item card. It's Veronica's tranquilizer gun, which holds twice the ammo as the standard counterpart. I turn the card over and over in my hands. I take it in and out of its tiny envelope 3 times and savor its mute fanfare. What a silly little thing. And how buoyant. I'm already thinking about setting it up again soon to see what it's like playing the other final girl in the box. That's Heather. She has different abilities. And reordering my vague shopping list to once again include the Intruders. That's the one that's kind of fascinating me. It's a different final girl movie based on the Strangers concept, where you have to build weapons and deal with 3 different villains roaming your house. Et voila, I am now a final girl customer again. Next up, revisiting Wingspan. So I thought it was important to return to this game, minus the original peeves and the neurotic editorializing. Not, I didn't want to let my hard-won working knowledge of it dry up, and I wanted to pay closer attention to the logic of its play and how that felt. I start to walk back through the finer points of turn steps and Atoma management for the solo version, and I get a ruby-throated hummingbird situated in the wetland zone of my board, and we're off to the races. In the first few birds, it's cool. I'm starting to see hints of a lucrative sort of sub-economy of combos between the actions that takes more brain power. Then I peer harder and see that I'm a twat. My gripe from a previous episode about bird churn and it not being reverent enough or whatever pretentious horse shit I said, it was wrong. I was doing the end of the step wrong. That's why the birds were flipping too fast. I'm walking that one back. I played it wrong. Just a half-clever bastard trying to sound discerning and who was probably mad and drunk when he wrote the script anyway. Like that's Elizabeth Hargraves or Stonemeyer Games' fault. Let's write a 500-word Jeremiah about how the birds go too fast. My pants are wet in the back. That's why we give stuff the benefit of the doubt and give it a second play, because if I'm not entirely grasping an efficient strategy yet, I had a thick as mud sinus headache before my first Ruthless Megatron Bloody Mary, and now I'm pretty faded and doing that thing where you follow text along the page with your finger and move your mouth when you read. But there are little joys of board management that are easier to access now that I have a more solid notion of how things work. And, I try to keep my bird work simple, looking up the fine print on turn actions, and I keep getting glimpses of that subtler and more creative economy between the standard bird stuff, like making a nest, laying eggs, and some of the bird powers on the cards. My hand swelled up to 6 cards fast, and I'm seeing places where the game gives you opportunities to do some interesting switch-ups and optimizing. This could be truly, pretty unforgiving going if you have some opponents who can calculate the best path through those bird powers. I wonder if it's the same tipping point as Cascadia, where it goes from, hey, isn't my map pretty? Until you see the red-tailed fox instead as part of an algebra equation whose complexity you can sense, but can't solve. Hey, I feel pretty good. I got 3 birds in my grassland zone. And the guy across the table says, well, your grassland birds are actually shit. Here, I'll show you. And they take out a whiteboard. I mean, that could happen to you in this game. Once I get my feet under me mechanically, I'm wondering if finessing these bird powers and the timing of actions could be as obsessive as Cascadia was. I'm saying it's possible now. The game is neat. All the information on the cards starts to roughly prioritize itself, and the game doesn't feel so sprawling. And there's just 2 other minor touches that aren't even criticisms. They're just things I noticed. One, I want to, I had a little epiphany about how good the Atoma system is here. I'm cruising along in my replay. Turns are getting faster. I'm not as hung up anymore. And then the open of round 3, shifting target bonus for the round is your total number of birds. And I get to the end of the round, I count my birds. It's 8. I see the Atoma's base scoring, and to which it adds cubes, and it comes out to exactly 8. And I take in a breath. It dead-ass tied me on autopilot. That's good system thinking. That's elegant. Nice work, Atoma Factory. I'm starting to see things. And then there's another little touch. I call this one Little Pangs. I got the weirdest emotional ping for the second game in a row. It fucks me up a little bit to spend an egg. I find myself apologizing to the bird I'm taking it from with a pardon me, and I try not to leave any birds with no eggs. That seems cruel, which is strange considering, for example, a Thunderbolt Apache leader scenario is set in Libya. I never think once about the Mark 20 cluster bombs. They're a war crime. Falling on Libya, as it exists in the flow of the game is just a quasi-believable set of conditions to match yourself against. But damn, do I hate taking an egg from a bird. I think I took an irrational egg-laying turn in round 2 just because it gave me a sense of well-being to make sure everybody was thriving and then they had babies on the way. Not optimal, but sure as hell emotional. So the rounds go quickly, and unless I made some other rookie goofs, the score pad showed that I'd beaten the Atoma 77-71 on its easiest setting. I do some light table cleanup, but I leave the game out so I can have another go in the morning. I turned my work light off, turned the floor accent lights on, and retired to the couch with the savory dregs of my ruthless Bloody Mary, and I just sat there and enjoyed the happiness of being wrong. Next, a second playthrough of another game with an Atoma for solo mode, Star Wars Outer Rim, except I don't do solo mode because I get another shot at multiplayer first, so we're going to tell that story. So I've played the Star Wars Outer Rim sandbox adventure game both solo and with others, and roundly enjoyed both sessions. But I'm circling back to a question I had the first time I discussed this on Breakup Gaming Society. What happens with a more contentious role-playing aspect if you lean into some of the rules like those that state money can exchange hands between any player for any reason at any time? Well, I found out. Here's the scene. 3 of us have drawn characters. I have Lando Calrissian. Donovan is playing as Bosk, and Rickety Rocket is playing Ketsu. So it's an interesting triad. 2 hunks of ruthless muscle, and 1 slick-talking gambler. I don't think I played particularly well, but it's almost like the great writer Saul Bellow once said, character is destiny. We're at about the halfway point in the game, and my character, Lando Calrissian, has good relationships with 3 of the 4 local factions, and he's swimming in cash. It's so much, I don't even know what to buy. So Bosk and Ketsu, both hit points, were there in a spot that would be loosened up by a capital infusion. So in steps me, role-playing Lando, trying to play the loan shark. Now see, I don't want these bruisers to have nice things, so I try to structure the payback so, they get their new toys, but they're hamstrung for a couple rounds while I get a lead. I want these loans to be poison pills. So I tack on ridiculous interest and cruel payback terms. Then both of them, of course, get cute about when and where they're going to settle up. During this time, both of these sluggers are upgrading to fancy tactical gear, adding vicious new crewmates, and generally turning every quarry they meet into a grease spot. And at the end of the day, what is my smooth, silk shirt-wearing ass going to do about it? Reminds me of the Casinos, that piece of voiceover when he's talking about Joe Pesci's character. He said when Nicky won, he collected, and when he lost, he told the bookies to go fuck themselves. That was the situation I was in. I was the bookie. So Bosk eventually settles up, but on a payback schedule that erases the leverage I tried to build in. Ketsu does the same thing. I have to accept a smaller payment. Then she tries to attack me right after the payment to let me know she didn't appreciate me reporting her to the Outer Rim credit agencies, which would have been good, but fortunately, Ketsu didn't have any of the mission or job cards that would have let her jump me, so I escaped an ass-kicking there. I don't expect, if we play again and Rickety Rocket knows the rules a little better, he'll know when and how to come after me. But, in the end, Bosk was unstoppable, partly due to the ship I helped him buy. In terms of strategy, it was a debacle for Lando, but it was an interesting experiment in the game's potential for allowing some RPG-style rat-fucking to reside right alongside the game's explicit mechanics. Once again, this has me thinking of what happens when and if we crack the unfinished business expansion, which I believe has a mechanism that enforces agreements between players. But going forward, no more lending money to dudes who can beat me up and pay me back when they feel like it. Next up, the off-kilter, blunt force brilliance of Ultramagnetic MCs. 1988 was a special year. It's like the new school was reinventing the genre every 6 weeks. It was astounding. Chief among the year's seminal efforts, Critical Beatdown from Ultramagnetic MCs. As the legend goes, Ultramag producer and mic man Ced G was one of the few, if not the only, dudes in the Bronx who had an SP1200 sampler. You can't talk about the golden era without talking about this machine. In this track, which is called Kool Keith Housing Things, you can see how quickly the SP12 became a weapon in his hands. Nobody else had this sound, this flavor of restless aggression, the sample stabs, the constant assault of stuttered multi-frequency backup percussion backed up by lacerating scratches. Feels like everything's in the foreground, but nothing's out of balance. It's a loud mix with an unconventional breakbeat. So who better to write it than perhaps the most unconventional MC? Kool Keith.
Every inning, I'm back to the dugout. You on the field, I'm ready to bug out like a manager, smacking up your team. Male or female, ducks who dream of taking me on the mic and making me rack up. MCs I stack up, 40% rappers need backup quickly. I'ma rip your brain off, throw it down so the blood can drain off my hands while I wave to a fan.
Outside of his bizarre and visceral imagery, I think the most masterful thing here is how he adjusts his cadence to coast across the track's overcharged terrain. It's patient, doesn't try to compete with the rhythmic D-Day that said G is launched. It never loses, the bars never lose their thrust, but they still dip and bend with broken rhyme patterns and smart pauses. It's a flawless and instinctual piece of MCing. I think it shows a deep musical sensibility. You're not going to hear a performance quite like it anywhere on earth. And that includes it also includes one of my favorite themes on the album, which is Kool Keith's preoccupation with eating, smashing, or simply overloading opponents' brains.
I play Brain Boy using the back to your skull. Smack it out the park. I rhyme bright and you're in the dark with shadows. Hallucinating battles to compel the capital K as in cool. Combine the Keith. Rap metal is terminal chief Android. Squashing the beef on time. And my mic will stay on.
If that gave you any kind of jolt, almost every track on the album is that good. Critical Beatdown didn't sell shit, but it's a monument that casts a larger shadow every year, and I hope I've given you some reason to believe my claim. So we are at the end of episode 83. I have been your host and friend, the Great Unclean One, reminding you to bless me with a tenner on the donate page at breakupgamingsociety.com if you want a comically destructive recipe book of cocktails that were consumed on this show and some of which were designed on the fly on this show. I thank you for your consideration. May you fight long and well.
Peace. I'm out of here.